All right, welcome back to some more FNAF reactions. And what we have on tap for today is apparently we were wrong about Circus Baby the entire time. I have no idea what we are wrong about, but I'm curious. And honestly, I'm very curious how this video is going to go and everything because I would say of all the FNAF convoluted timeline lore implications, the overall story maybe is something that I'm not the biggest fan of because it's so complicated and confusing, right? It started off on this, little girl, 8-bit sprite that we saw in FNAF sister location in the Circus Baby Cupcake minigame. Um, they had green eyes, and the Circus Baby animatronic had blue eyes. And then when this little girl walked up to the Circus Baby animatronic and got scooped because the stomach claw mechanism, Baby's eyes turned from blue to green. So we, as the player in the whole community, took that as their eyes changing from blue to green, aka their possession. Circus Baby is now connected to Elizabeth Afton's soul. It's also confusing of when that death happens. Is the first event in the series? Is it not? Because there's a ton of evidence that says it's early in the timeline, but then there's also a ton of evidence that says it has to be later. I've been over this time and time and time again in previous FNAF theories that the death order is so frustrating because Elizabeth Ashton's death, a lot of things point to it being one of the first things in the series because of all the FNAF 4 clues. But it's complicated and confusing, which shocker thing about what series it is. It's also confusing, and there's a lot of evidence that says it has to be first, it has to be early. But then there's just one or two pieces that stick in your mind. You're like, wait, this doesn't add up. And to me, the main one is the whole Funtime animatronics creations. And if this detail was not there, then I feel like it'll be a foregone conclusion that Elizabeth Afton was death was one of the first things in the series, and it'll be done with. It'll be confirmed. Scott Cawthon would probably also confirm it as well, and it will be someone that will just be widely accepted in the community. But there's one sticking detail from the Funtime animatronics Sim Sister location that we know about that we got from the blueprints that completely contradict Elizabeth Afton being early on, their death being early on in the series. And it's the fact that we know the Funtime Circus animatronics were made by Afton Robotics, right? Elizabeth Afton's father, the purple guy. And we know they were made from the blueprints. They were made with the idea of luring and capturing kids for soul remnant, um, something along those lines. They were made to capture kids. So they were made to capture kids. Why then would your daughter be killed by one of said animatronics that are meant to capture kids? Right? Like there has to be a reason, like a cause and effect. There has to be a cause that allowed William Afton to create animatronics that would go on to have the intention of capturing kids for a remnant to gain William Afton's immortality. Like something has to happen prior to that. And if Elizabeth Afton's death is early on in the series, then animatronics being created to capture kids cannot be that early on the timeline, right? So Elizabeth Afton's later. But there's a lot of evidence in FNAF 4 that says it's early on and one of the first events in the series. Because it leads to the whole FNAF 4 Crying Child experiments in the FNAF 4 room. The Missing Girls room is also in FNAF 4. The stomach mouth area of Fredbear also could be connected to Baby because that's how a Crying Child would see that event, is their mouth being open and then getting killed. I don't know. So, and then that's not even get into the other aspect of Elizabeth Afton and Circus Baby that's also confusing. That there's multiple versions of Circus Baby that we got from the original trilogy of books, specifically the Fourth Closet, where there's multiple versions of the Elizabeth Afton Charlie bot made by Henry. And apparently, because, all right, if that sounds confusing, let me break it down for a second. Is Henry is the co-creator, William Afton's business partner, and when Henry, I want to say Edwin because I'm so tired of the mimic, but it's never been confirmed that Henry and Edwin are the same person, so I'm keeping them separate. But Henry's child, Charlie Charlotte, was killed, and Henry, filled with grief and being a genius animatronic inventor, made multiple robot creations of his dead child to allow her to like grow up and keep them alive even though they're dead. Right? So there was like a baby version of Charlie, a toddler version, child, teenager going through angst, young adult, right? There's multiple versions of the Charlie bot that was made by Henry so they can stay alive while they are going through the grieving process of their child being killed. And at the very minimum, I don't know if it's the one adult version or it's one of the versions, but one of the adult versions, minimum, is the baby animatronic that we know, that we've seen since this location. That is one of the adult versions of that creation. Because that makes sense. And then you also get into detail of like all the stuff in Faster Frights where Baby apparently is more powerful than, William Afton and everything, and they have like Death Black's tentacles coming out of their stomach, right? I think that's what it's called. It's blood tentacles coming out of Baby. And I think the blood is coming from previous Afton victims. I could be a little bit wrong about that. But yeah, that's the thing that is just in the books that just mentioned. Because that's very weird. So who knows what we've been wrong about Circus Baby. To me, I think there's a lot. Because it's connected to William Afton's daughter being connected to Baby. But then you also have Baby being connected to the Charlie bot and having soul tentacles, blood tentacles come out of them. Because why not in this series at this point?
Elizabeth Afton is an interesting character to say the least. As Circus Baby, she has unwavering loyalty to William Afton, and even thinks that he brought them all to FNAF 6 to receive some gift. She even celebrates that now they can be complete, ending with the lines,
"Watch, listen, and be full."
Which is
iconic FNAF 6 speech, by the way. But you all know that.
is a weird thing to say, and I've always chalked it up to just an odd writing choice. But I think this line is indicative of Circus Baby's plan all along, even as far back as FNAF 4. Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. I readily admit
FNAF 4, huh? Okay. I'm very curious. I'm very curious about FNAF 4 because I would say FNAF 4 was a time, like back in good old 2015, where as much as FNAF 4 is confusing to talk about because what even is FNAF 4? That's the first mention of Baby that we got, and I know there was, a pigtail girl with orange hair that you can talk to, and I know when we were leading up to Sister Location's release, we as a community thought that that pigtail girl was the FNAF 4 Crime Child sister. It wasn't.
that I'm making a very bold claim here, and I'm basically saying that in everything Circus Baby did, she was planning for a specific outcome. But if that's the case, what is everything Circus Baby did? Well, obviously, she only started being prominent in her first game, Sister Location.
No. No! Respectfully, no. Roll that tape, play it again, because respectfully, No.
Specific outcome. But if that's the case, what is everything Circus Baby did? Well, obviously, she only started being prominent in her first game, Sister Location.
She's not prominent because she doesn't show up. Right? She never showed up. She never did anything. The most you got of Baby is in night 5 where you decommission her, but their eyes are gone, their endoskeleton's gone, they're just slumped over and everything. You never interact with Baby. You interact with every other animatronic in Sister Location in this game. The one you do not interact with is Baby at all. And that's weird. And also when you get to this Ennard room, you hear Baby's voice, but I think we've always believed that's Ennard's voice using Baby as the, voice megaphone, right? Using Baby's voice because we know that once again the Funtime animatronics were made to capture kids. They have like audio lures, sound illusions going around. And we know Ennard, the whole point is there's a piece of all the Funtime animatronics put into Ennard to be like one embodiment of an animatronic to use you as a skin suit and then go back to the surface, right? And then later on, between Sister Location and FNAF 6, Ennard and Baby have a fight, argument, whatever, and then Baby is yeeted out from the Ennard conglomeration, and that's how we get Scrap Baby in FNAF 6, where they have a giant lobster robot claw and roller skates, because why not? But no, FNAF 6 is the first time you ever interact with Baby when their eyes are open, talking everything. It's not Sister Location.
Where we hear who is later to be revealed is Elizabeth Afton asking William Afton, her father, to play with the newly made Circus Baby, claiming that he made it just for her. But William Afton won't let Elizabeth play with Circus Baby, but eventually, she sneaks by anyway, and we learn through the dialogue in the game and in this cutscene from the secret minigame, yeah, once she does that, Circus Baby scoops her up and kills her in the process. But judging from the change in eye color of Circus Baby to match Elizabeth's, it seems like this was the event that leads Elizabeth to possess Circus Baby. And in Sister Locations, she seems to be the most successfully possessed character.
But yeah, this scene right here where you can see Baby's eyes like blackened and everything, and you can't see like any wires of an endoskeleton. Yeah. This is the most you see a Baby in Sister Location, is this. That's it. So, respectfully, no. Sister Location is not Baby's game because they're not even around.
Ever capable of fully conscious conversation. By the end of the game, we see Elizabeth trick Michael Afton into the scooping room to hollow out his insides, so she, as Ennard, a conglomeration of all the Funtime animatronics.
Was it Baby tricking you, or is it Ennard tricking you and using Baby's voice? Right? Because how would Baby be tricking you? Because once again, we saw that Baby's eyes are blackened. There's no endoskeleton, so Baby's like gone. Right? Baby's not existent in this moment. Ennard is outside the room and everything. Ennard is the one with, once again, the piece of all the Funtime animatronics. Right? Why would it not just be Ennard tricking you? Ennard being the one animatronic outside the scooping room. They are the ones that tricked you. Right?
Can put on his skin like a tuxedo and leave pretending to be human. But if you've played and beaten the secret minigame, you also unlock the private office door in that same sequence.
Which, by the way, that minigame is so hard. The Ennard fight in Night 5, it's so hard. I've done many attempts of it on stream and everything, and it's impossible. Because the RNG aspect of it is so difficult. Like, obviously, yeah, FNAF games are known to be difficult. There is some luck and RNG involved, especially in the harder nights. I get all that. And I'll be honest, I am more on the receiving end of being unlucky than lucky when it comes to the hard nights of FNAF. But no, that night is 100% RNG. Because two things. A, there is I would say, pretty good chance, more often than not, that Ennard will show up at one of your doors and then he'll stay there, right? He'll stay there. So you keeping the door down wastes a ton of power. That's just how all the FNAF games are. You closing doors waste the most amount of power. So you can never afford to keep a door down longer than like 2 seconds in any of these like hard 2020 nightmare modes, right? So there's a chance he can just stay out there forever. And the longer you keep the door down, the more your power gets drained and everything, and the more likelihood you lose. Also, if you do get to 5 a.m. and your power runs out, instead of it being, the very tense dopamine rush you get where, the previous games where you get to 5 a.m., the power runs out and you're just sitting there waiting in anticipation, hoping that you're just able to luck it out. It's like 5:50, your power goes out, and you're just hoping, praying that you can last there 10 minutes, and then you're just stuck there in anticipation, just praying that you get to the end, right? And then there's a huge dopamine rush when you get to 6 a.m. But in the Ennard fight in Sister Location, you run out of power, he jump scares you immediately. There's no wait. There's no anticipation. You run out of power, that's it. So you have to have enough power and not luck out, so there's no anticipation. But B, you also have to get lucky enough where he's never camping at your door for more than a second. And I've done dozens and dozens of times on stream, and every single time that happened at least once, where he was camping the door for like 10, 20, 30 seconds sometimes. And I'm like, I lose. I have no chance. I can't win at this point.
Which instead sees Michael defending himself against Ennard using the office doors until he can eventually escape. During this sequence, Ennard even uses Elizabeth Afton's original child voice to try to manipulate Michael, in what I think is some of the best psychological horror this series has ever seen.
Isn't this why you came here? To be with me again.
But even in that ending, Ennard eventually
Exotic Butters.
Up to Michael Afton. So now Ennard is free in the grander world, roaming around in Michael Afton's body. But eventually that body starts to rot, and they have to escape into the sewers, else be detected by the public. It's during this time that Ennard has a sort of internal conflict between Elizabeth Afton and the other souls that were inside of the Funtime animatronics. We saw this in a conversation in the source code between FNAFworld.com and ScottGames.com over the series of several months. It boiled down to these. This seems like the rest of the Funtime animatronics ejected Circus Baby from Ennard, and these two separated creatures formed Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy. But then by FNAF 6, they are all lured towards the pizzeria simulator. Once there, they're melted down and burnt away so their spirits can rest. But just before that happens and Henry elaborates his entire plan, Circus Baby says this.
Now we can do what we were created to do and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy. Watch. Listen, and be full.
Which, as I mentioned, is a strange line, and doesn't 100% make sense. Sure, she believes this was all actually William Afton's doing, but then what does be complete and watch, listen, and be full mean? This is kind of where speculation surrounding Circus Baby is left. It's a pretty understandable story, and Circus Baby as Elizabeth Afton is loyal to William Afton, with a weird writing choice at the end of FNAF 6. But that was until last Friday.
Alright, before we get to last Friday and everything, the whole thing about, watch, listen, and be full, Elizabeth Afton being tied to William Afton, want to make him proud and everything. I don't know what this video is going to dive into it because I have no idea what happened on whatever Friday this is, but I know we release these FNAF videos on Fazbear Friday fast. I don't know what to call it. That's a little alliteration. But I've always interpreted the whole thing about making her dad William Afton proud and everything is because I think it's at least been my assumption that Elizabeth Afton felt abandoned by William Afton because William Afton was more interested in Henry's daughter, Charlie Charlotte, um, because they were literally going to possess the puppet and everything. And that we've always assumed that being William Afton's first kill and everything. So, because William Afton has been so interested in Henry's daughter, Charlie Charlotte, that would leave William Afton's actual blood daughter, Elizabeth, to feel abandoned because, oh, they're not as interesting as Charlie Charlotte. And now, Elizabeth Afton in the baby animatronic, she now can do her father's bidding because now she is useful to him. That's how I've always interpreted it.
And did I mention this game is free Western EST every single week? But last Friday's stream was myself as the lore professor grading chat's theories. People would just submit theories into the chat, and I'd discuss them for a bit and give them a final grade. It was a lighthearted community event, and eventually, Seeker of Comfiness posted this. Elizabeth is the one who says, "I will put you back together. If Molten MCI..."
Oh God, no, 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 no. No, not the "I will put you back together" line. God. How many times have we said, X person said, "I will put you back together," right? We believe Psychic Friend Fredbear is the one who said it. We believe Cassie is the one who said it because they're attached to Psychic Friend Fredbear because they're Golden Freddy, so that would be connected to Cassidy. We believe it's William Afton. We believe it's connected to Henry. We believe it's Elizabeth Afton because the Pigtail Girl in FNAF 4, which once again, at some point, we assumed the Pigtail Girl in the FNAF 4 minigame between nights, the shade of yellow text was the exact same as the "I will put you back together" lines. We've assumed it was Michael Afton saying "I will put you back together" because he feels sorry for killing his younger brother in a prank that went horribly wrong. Pretty much any important character in this series has been connected to "I will put you back together." Like, think of any named important character in the series, chances are they've been connected to the "I will put you back together" line.
and Shatter Victim are true, then Baby's Ennard plan literally puts him back together. The mangle in her room was a hint too. And when I first saw that, I was convinced that it's a very solid possibility. I didn't really think too much more into it, but I said that it was a good idea. Especially since Circus Baby is down in the bunker where the other end of that walkie-talkie Fredbear plush is. She had access to talk to the crying child, if she was down there by that time.
Yeah, hold on. I mean, it depends on. Hold on. If that's true, then it just comes to this one question: what comes first, FNAF 4 or Sister Location? Right. What comes first? Sister Location would come first, right? Sister Location comes first. FNAF 4, the bedroom would be, the girl's bedroom would be missing. That ties to Baby. The Sister Location bunker is built underneath the FNAF 4 house. So, I guess all the events points to Sister Location being first before FNAF 4. Okay.
But we just kind of moved on until a while later, What the 911 posted this. Baby was just memeing when she said, "You won't die."
Okay.
Which was funny, but really had me start to think. Several times.
"You won't die" is a meme. Okay. Even though, like, Michael Afton has been, scooped, skewered, burned multiple times, and just like his father, won't die. But I guess it's just a meme, so okay. Doesn't explain that he's gone through several experiences that should have killed him, but he survived.
In this franchise, Circus Baby seems to imply she knows something is going on, or at least what she thinks is going on. She tells Michael he won't die.
Hey Shark, what's up? Been a while since I've seen you in one of my FNAF streams, so welcome. How you doing?
And miraculously, he doesn't die. She's leading the fun times around as Ennard for some specific goal, and when she gets to FNAF 6, she's convinced that it was all a part of a plan. If Elizabeth Afton as Circus Baby was stuck in the bunker while William Afton was doing his remnant experiments, maybe she was watching them, learning from them, and if he allowed, actively participating in them. After all, in the Silver Eyes trilogy, Circus Baby is basically the last.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So this FNAF Theory reaction is about we've been wrong about Circus Baby this entire time. I'm not sure if you can see from the runtime of this video. There's still quite a bit to go and everything, so still early on. But yeah, apparently Elizabeth Afton Baby has known a lot more than what we originally knew. I've no idea what that is, but yeah, apparently that's the premise.
Lab assistant to William Afton, and we knew that she's on William Afton's side, but what if it goes much further than that? And that's when everything started to line up and evidence kept popping up. I started telling my friends how cool this idea was, and they brought even more evidence to the table. John FNAF mentioned that in Help Wanted 2, in the private office levels of Sister Location, the final interview one is all about Circus Baby. Corey and Connie dual process theory brought up the fact that in FNAF 4, in Elizabeth's bedroom, is that Mangle animatronic. Like the original comment from Seeker of Comfiness mentioned, not only does that talk about the fact that Mangle is an allusion to putting things back together, but this implies that Elizabeth liked robotics.
The whole Mangle puts back together thing. I guess it. I would say my one counter argument, my one pushback on the whole Mangle being put back together thing. My main pushback is how reliable is the FNAF 1, 2, 3 tapes, right? How reliable for evidence are they at this point? Because at this point, the tapes are what? The games came out like what, 2013, 2014, something like that. So the tapes have been around for over a decade, and the story was so much simpler, way less complicated. There was way less stuff thrown around when these tapes were made and everything. So it calls the question, how reliable are the tapes, considering there's so much information that we got from the series ever since the tapes, right? And plus, not to be that person, but, you know, we know in FNAF 2 specifically, the tapes were pre-recorded and recorded from months or years ago before we, as we assume to be Michael Afton, showed up at the FNAF 2 pizzeria and are going through the 5 nights.
All of this and more evidence started lining up. So I'm not going to beat around the bush any longer. Without any further ado, here is the true story of Elizabeth Afton from her perspective.
From her perspective. All right, let's go. Here we go. Y'all ready for this? All right. Let's get to the main point of this video. I'm excited. Y'all excited? All right, let's go.
And that's a big asterisk on from her perspective, because I don't want to imply William actually gave a shit about his kids with some of the things I'm about to say. This is what
we know he didn't. Let's just be honest. You may not be honest and you tell it how it is, but I'm going to tell it how it is. We know William Afton, not the best father, right? You know, you could look at the abandonment of Elizabeth Afton, the abuse and torture experiments on Michael Afton, whatever Crying Child, FNAF 4 Crying Child's name is, abandoned the wife, um, being left in his work and everything, creating animatronic devices that are meant to kill people, searching for immortality, killing other kids, especially his business partner's kid. Like, Wood Maffin's not the best dad. Can we just be honest here? After this, you can watch the theory of the whole lore being planned out. Maybe. What video is that? I know after this, the plan was to watch the new John FNAF video that just came out like a day ago, about Midnight Motorist.
Elizabeth saw William Afton's actions as. And yes, in this scenario, she would have to die before the crying child. I'll get to that. Elizabeth was the favorite child of the Afton family.
Maybe? Okay.
Due in large part to her interest in robotics, just like her father. She was so raptured by her father's animatronics that he even made her a life-size Mangle animatronic, so she could take it apart and put it back together to her heart's content, learning all about its mechanisms and what made it work. And
How does Mangle get to the FNAF 2 pizzeria then?
when he began working on the Funtime animatronics, and she heard that Circus Baby was made specifically for her, she couldn't wait to play with it. But her father wouldn't let her, convinced that it was too dangerous. But she snuck in anyway.
Which, it was too dangerous because, once again, you get close enough, a stomach hatch opens, a claw mechanism shoots out, grabs them, then kills them.
And when she was alone with Circus Baby, she paid the price for it. Circus Baby's secondary programming took over, scooping up Elizabeth and killing her in the process. But in that moment, Elizabeth Afton's spirit went on to possess Circus Baby, and quite a whole possession it was, maintaining most of her personality and intelligence. And in the possession of Circus Baby,
Isn't Midnight Motor still really debated? Yes. But then again, when it comes to FNAF, what isn't hotly debated at this point? Like, Midnight Motorist is highly debated. What is the entirety of FNAF 4? What is that game? Is it Nightmare Illusions? Is it experiments on sound illusion discs? Is it a mixture of both? Like, what is FNAF 4? Who said the I will put you back together line in FNAF 4? The name of the Crying Child in FNAF 4. The 4 games in the series, are they actual games that was made by that rogue indie game developer that we're told about in VR Help 101 that was meant to lure us away and gaslight us from the truth? Midnight Most is another one. What other things are just highly debated? Trying to think, what else is highly debated? I'm sure there's just others that I'm just blanking on forgetting, but you get my point though. Like, there's just so many things that is highly divided to this day. And maybe it's just like I guess Stockholm Syndrome, kind of not really. Where Stockholm Syndrome is the thing of you fall in love with your capture as like a, you know, psychotic type of way and everything. I'm kind of like that with Midnight Motorist because I have my own reservations, I have my own ideas, I have my own theories of what I think Midnight Motorist is the truth and everything. So much so, I've said this on numerous streams and everything. I don't make my own FNAF theories, mainly because I don't think my script writing for theories are the best. And also, I don't have the editing skills to make FNAF theories because I feel like at this point in the big old year 2025 and everything, you have to have like these big old high budget fidelity PCs with all this like editing software and power and everything. in order to get people to watch it and, consume your content. I don't have that. I don't have those skills. I understand my limitations. But I've said, if I ever were to have some editor and I were to make some FNAF theory, if I only could make one, it would be on Midnight Motors of what I think is the truth. And so much so, I understand that I am in the minority opinion. It will probably give me a ton of hate based on what I think Midnight Motors is all about. But yeah, I've said numerous times, though, that when it comes to Midnight Motors theories, I am intrigued because just curious to see what other people think of as their ideas. What do you think is the bots? Yeah, see, that's another one. See, another mystery in FNAF 4. So, once again, getting back to the point of what is FNAF 4? There's like 20 different things in that game alone that goes nowhere, and it's so confusing. And to me, I don't know. I don't know what's in the bots. Mainly because I've always had the idea, and I'm curious if you think about this as well. Let me know your thoughts. But in my opinion, the bots has changed a few times of what's in it. I think when the FNAF 4 bots was first teased and shown in FNAF 4 in 2015, I think it was meant to be some homage. It was meant to be, maybe like a hostile wristband for the FNAF 4 Crunch on his final moments before he flatlined from the Fredbear incident. Maybe a picture of the Aftons. We're going back to whole like dream theory. To me, that's what was in the bots as like a memory. And then it switched to maybe it's an actual robot version of the FNAF 4 Crying Child, because we believe at this point that the FNAF 4 Crying Child was rebuilt and reborn quite literally in robot form. That was the "I will put you back together" line. It's quite literally being put back together as a robot. And whether it's broken robot pieces of the FNAF 4 Crying Child, or it's the actual body of the FNAF 4 Crying Child, like the human form, in the bots. Because I want to say is it Twist Animatronics? In the original trilogy. I want to say it's a Twisted Animatronics book. The characters go to a garage and they find an old chest with 2 locks on it. I want to say there's 2 locks. And they open the box and they see Charlotte body in the bots in robot form. And to me, that's what I think was in the bots, at least a second time.
She watched her father bring her to the sister location bunker, watching him work tirelessly for some goal. All the while, her father studied her little brother endlessly, and she became curious, seeing the monitors and walkie-talkie setup that William had. Eventually, she tried to speak through that walkie-talkie, and heard her little brother, the crying child, on the other end. Now she had a companion, someone to talk to and keep safe. She wanted to make sure that her brother would be okay, and spoke to him through the Fredbear plushie. I know that's a big claim, but here's a quick aside for some additional evidence. As was mentioned, that private office level in Help Wanted 2 is all about Circus Baby, but even more than that. Take a look at the dialogue that both Circus Baby and the Fredbear plushie says. It's so similar.
Okay, yeah. That was gonna be my pushback. I'm like, the dialogue from Second Friend Fredbear and FNAF 4, I'm like, is that stuff Baby would say? That was my immediate thought, because I know they say stuff like, you know what'll happen if he catches you, run the other way, don't you forget what you saw. Like that stuff that Baby said? Interesting.
Something I hadn't clocked until now. Listen to Circus Baby.
You must follow my instructions in Funtime Auditorium. Ballora is going to follow you. She will try to catch you. I will help you avoid her. She will not follow you inside the scooping room.
You must follow my instructions. They will try to catch you. That... I like that. That is good. Huh. Interesting. No, I like that. Oh, that's really interesting. Because remember, throughout the entire game, we are following the instructions of what the Psychic Friend Fredbear plush is telling us, right? You know, to go the other room, no, run the other way, from the, Fredbear, I think it was a Springlock suit at the moment. You know what will happen if he catches you? She will try to catch you. Okay. That's interesting.
She is afraid. Go back now.
Now let me show you some of Fredbear's dialogue, with the best impression that I can muster. AKA not a very good one, but...
Honestly, you don't know, but in regards to FNAF 4, I think it happens simultaneously with this location, which is a common theory. Are you saying simultaneously, like, timeline, like, FNAF 4, the pizzeria with Golden Freddy and Golden Bonnie, and then the sister location bunker service are happening simultaneously at the same time? Because remember, the whole point of sister location is to be a warehouse to ship off animatronics to, like, birthday parties and private events, right? Okay, yeah. I think so. Let me think. I could see that because we do know they are built on top of each other. And I would say we've had the theory since... God, I can't remember what year it was. I can't remember what game it was. But I know a popular theory that's been circling around for years. For some reason, my brain just can't wrap around it when it first showed up. But I know a popular theory out there is multiple locations can be open at the same time. So FNAF 4 and this location being open at the same time. That's interesting. And honestly, I feel like that does make sense. Because if we assume, right, this is a huge assumption, but I've always thought the thing the FNAF 4 Crown saw that made him scared of the pizzeria is what happened to his sister with Baby, right? Because he's not afraid of Freddy Fazbear, he's not afraid of the animatronics, the pizzeria, the franchise. He's not scared of any of that. He watches the show. He has plushies in his bedroom, right? So clearly there's something traumatic that happened that he saw that now made him scared of the Springlock suits. And to me, what I've always thought is he saw his sister walk up to the baby animatronic that was made for her, see her get scooped, and then killed. And that's why on the belly, stomach, mouth of Fredbear has, like, the stomach teeth. That's because how the FNAF 4 Crown Child would see and interpret that event.
My best impression of Circus Baby. What did he do this time? He locked you in your room again. Don't be scared. I am here with you. These lines are written so similarly, as if they're being spoken by the same character. But if you still need more evidence for this, how do we get into the private office of Sister Location? It's a place that's typically inaccessible unless you do one very specific thing, and that is play Circus Baby's minigame. And once you get in the office, Elizabeth, as Ennard, knows every other way to sneak into that room. She was down there, she would have access to this office, and you only get access to the office through her. They continued like this for some time, but eventually her little brother was killed in an accident involving the Fredbear animatronic. She was devastated, but watching her father's work and knowing what she herself is, she knows that this is not the end for her brother. She knows he can be brought back. And to help comfort him in his final moments alive, she promises that he will be put back together. But time passes, and he's never brought into the bunker like she was. She needs to go up and get him. Eventually, on William Afton's orders, Michael Afton is sent down into the bunker, and to Elizabeth, this is a gift. This is a way out given to her by her father, a gift that any method is justified to use, including murder. After all, she knows that even if she kills Michael in the process of escaping, he can always be brought back. He can always be put back together. She herself tells him,
You won't die.
so she lures him into the scooping room and empties him out so herself and all the other fun times can leave the bunker in pursuit of William Afton. It's perfect. She's gathered all the souls together, and all she needs to do is find her father. But over time, the body they're using rots, and they have to escape to the sewers. Even further, the others stop listening to Elizabeth. She knows how to save them, and they're refusing to be saved, booting her out of their own collective, abandoning her. So she goes and repairs herself, something she would know how to do with all of her robotics experience. And eventually, she hears the call of the pizzeria simulator. Her father is smart enough to know what would draw everyone together. This has to be her father's doing. So she runs to that beacon, and once everyone is gathered there, she triumphantly states her victory.
You played right into our hands. Did you really think that this job just fell out of the sky for you? No. This was a gift for us.
She believes that all of this was done by William Afton.
You gathered them all together in one place, just like he asked you to. All of those little souls in one place, just for us. A gift.
She herself tried to gather all the souls, but she failed. But luckily, her father was able to get that gift for her.
Now we can do what we were created to do and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy. Watch, listen, and be full.
And
And cut to the most iconic moment in the entire series. Wait. I don't know if you can see. Hold up. I don't know if you can see. Hair sticking up, everything. Goosebumps. Whenever I see or hear audio from the FNAF 6 ending, I get goosebumps. I get chills because it's so iconic. After all these years, I still love this ending. And I would not have been mad at all if this was the end of Five Nights at Freddy's for all we know. There was no Skater Breach, Ruin, VR games, Into the Pit, the Mimic game coming out in June 13th or 14th or whatever, something like that, middle of June. I'll be totally okay with this ending. I think we all would. As in the hallucinatory gas was released from the bunker into Child's room, make him think of nightmares. I mean, there's no way that nightmare trunks were made by someone. And if they weren't, wouldn't mean the other children would have mentioned it, which they don't. What do you think? I mean, let me think. I don't think agreed. All right, let me think. Okay. I don't think the FNAF 4 Nightmare Animatronics ever existed. Right? They were never built. To me, they were like maybe the FNAF 1 animatronics, since it's only Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, Golden Freddy. or something like that. It's the sound illusion discs that made them look withered and horrifying and everything. But no, I don't think William Afton or Henry or any of these other inventors that we hear about actually made run down withered animatronics from scratch and everything. I think it was part of a sound illusion disc hallucinatory gas experiment to see what the sound illusion disc can do on someone and make them perceive something that they're not, because that's the whole point of sound illusion disc is making you see something that the person who created the disc wants you to see. In this point being the nightmare with animatronics.
Finally, William Afton has promised he can bring people back from the dead. And finally, he has all the pieces to do it. He can put everyone back together. He can make them complete and full again. Nothing can get in his way this time, and William can save everyone. But of course, her faith is misplaced, and she dies finding that out. Now, I mentioned I do have one major problem with this theory. As solid and as evidence-backed as everything is, it would necessitate that William Afton dies before the crying child.
Well, first of all, we know William Afton doesn't die because he always comes back. And also, that's the common assumption, right? From a time perspective, Elizabeth Afton dies first before the FNAF 4 crying child. That's why their bedroom is empty. That's why you see the stomach mouth of Fredbear in FNAF 4. That's why he's scared, is because of his sister's death.
Which would mean that the Funtime animatronics would have been made before the crying child dies, likely before the missing child incident. So before any of these events have happened, William Afton would have, for some reason, made a series of animatronics that are perfectly built to kidnap children.
Yeah. And I said this in the introduction of the stream and everything, is, once again, there's a ton of evidence from FNAF 4 alone that paints a picture that Elizabeth Afton is one of the first deaths in the series, because it causes William Afton to create the sound illusion disc, experiment on people and see what's possible. It started his whole capturing and lure kids to build up remnant soul energy to go on his whole immortality arc, right? So a lot of things get set in motion after Elizabeth Afton's death. So logically, that would mean, from a time perspective, it's early on the series. But like I said in the beginning, there's just one sticking point that doesn't make sense. Because as much as it answers and solves for it being early, one thing that doesn't answer is why. As much as it says it has to be early, why does William Afton create the Funtime that were made to capture kids? Right? Why? Like, something had to happen for him to create the Funtime to capture kids. You're not just gonna... I refuse to believe he made these futuristic, perfect animatronics that were made with luring, stomach claw mechanism, sound illusion discs, all this stuff. I refuse to believe he just made off on the whim without having the intention of capturing kids. Right? He made it to capture kids. Why? Something had to have happened before they caused him to make the Funtime to capture kids. Why? Just how Chica says she was a first and she is female. Crying Child's sister is a girl, so that kind of connects. And she is... Are you implying that Chica, who is Susie, and the FNAF 4 Crying Child's sister are the same person? Let me know in the comment. But, again, I guess open up this can of worms is, who was the first death? I guess I can take headphones off because we're transitioning from one video to the next. Okay. So, death order. I've said this numerous times, but alright, let's talk about it again. Was death order. Because you have Elizabeth Afton as a candidate for being one of the first deaths in the series. You have Susie because of the Ultimate Custom line, Ultimate Custom Night death lines where they say stuff like, I was the first, I'm the one who's seen everything. Right? And then the third candidate I have is Charlie, right? Who is Henry's daughter, who was killed outside the pizzeria, which coincidentally connects to the next video we're gonna do, which is talking about Midnight Motorist. So that's fun. But so of those three people, to me, those are three candidates for who dies first. Is Chica Susie, Elizabeth Afton, and Charlie Charlotte, the puppet, Henry's daughter, who was killed by William Afton when Charlie Charlotte is locked outside a pizzeria. William Afton drives up in his purple car, kills them, and then drives off. Right? We see that first time in FNAF 2, and then we see it more in high depth resolution, I guess, in Midnight Motorist. And in the circus puppet minigame. I can't remember what the puppet's called, the minigame in FNAF 6. Puppet something. Circus puppet? I don't remember. To me, I've always thought that Henry's daughter, Charlie Charlotte, is first. They are the first death. It's the one that causes everything to set in motion. It's the only time William Afton kills someone outside the pizzeria. All the other deaths are inside the pizzeria. He drives up outside, kills them in an alleyway, and drives off. So to me, that's important. And another reason why I think so is because of what we hear Henry talk about in the insane speech in FNAF 6. How you get the insane speech is you buy the Egg Baby data archive. You go into the FNAF 6 bunker, hold down the power button of the computer to turn into safe mode, and you hear blueprints and you hear the HRY223 audio tape, and we assume HRY is Henry. And some of the lines he talks about is, a wound first inflicted on me that I'll let spread to others. A wound first inflicted on me, aka William Afton, inflicting the wound, killing Henry's daughter first, and then let spread to others, aka the MCI Missing Children incident. Elizabeth Afton, an Afro Crying Child, right? That would mean him let spread to others, right? So to me, that's why I've always thought that Charlie Charlotte, Henry's daughter, is first, is because of those reasons. But then you get into the problem of, well, I'm glad you brought up the whole Chica Susie death lines of being first, because it totally contradicts. And I've said this on previous streams, and why the death order is so confusing is because you have multiple people saying they're first. You have Chica Susie saying they're first, they've seen everything. But you also have Henry saying, a wound first inflicted on me that let spread to others. So of these two, which first is more reliable? To me, that's a problem. This is some extra potential advice that Susie's death was the first, like you sense this location. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. But to me, I don't blame anyone who says, oh, I think Susie's first because of the Ultimate Custom line Death Knights, or you think it's Elizabeth Afton, or the FNAF 4 Crying Child. But I feel like no matter what you think is first, regardless, kids die, which is tragic, but this series desensitizes you a lot. There's evidence for no matter who you think is first, right? There's evidence for all of them. The problem is there's one or two sticking points that don't fit cleanly. That's like, yes, this is first, great, But then what about this? You kind of have to ignore this sticking point in order to say that this person's first, right? Well, it was Daphne's first, but then why were the Funtime animatronics made to capture kids if they're the first death? That doesn't make any sense. Charlie Charlotte being killed first because they're locked outside the pizzeria, and then you have Henry's line about wound first inflicted on me. Okay, well then what about the line that Susie said that, I was the first, I'm the one who's seen everything? Then what about that? Right? So it's very, very confusing. Right? Because if I'm not mistaken as well, right, if we go back even further, connecting to Charlie Charlotte, because we know they go on to possess a puppet. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about this, but if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Charlie Charlotte go on to possess the puppet later on? Right? Isn't it a thing? Chat, y'all to remind me on this, but isn't it a thing where Charlie Charlotte goes on to possess the puppet, and the kids from the missing children incident are already dead? Right? The missing children incident happens, and then Charlie goes on to possess the puppet, and then puts those kids in the suits to then go on to possess them. Isn't that what happens? And if that's true, right? Because that's what I've heard. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's happened. Chat, y'all to remind me. Then that once again that throws a wrench in my whole theory that Charlie Charlotte's first. So if they're first, so then damn, their body is just dead for a long time before they go on to possess the puppet. Or maybe it's later on. But then what about the whole wound first inflicted on me by Henry? Maybe there are people saying they're first because they were killed at different locations, so you can't know they weren't or were first. Yeah. Now, what? Yeah. So yeah, she does do that. Okay, so yeah, that throws a wrench in my whole equation. Is Charlie Charlotte is dead forever. The missing children incident happens where 5 kids go into a back room killed, and then Charlie Charlotte just randomly becomes the puppet. They were just dead for a long time then. But the whole thing about the death order and Susie being first. Now, this might be an unpopular opinion, but this comes back to in FNAF VR Help 1 and 2, in the grave sites where you have to light the torches a certain order. And you have to light Susie's torch first, right? And if I'm not mistaken, you light the puppets last, right? Isn't it Susie, the Chica, Fotsy, Freddy, Bonnie, Golden Freddy, the puppet? I think so. Chat, y'all to let me know, what was the order of the torches in FNAF VR Help 1 and 2? Susie's first, Chica's first, puppets last, because their grave sites like completely destroyed, right? And people say that's death order. This may be an unpopular opinion, but you know what? I'm just gonna say it anyway. Because I'm not saying like I'm smarter than people. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I've thought of it as I've interpreted it another way. Instead of being the death order, what if instead it's the way the souls either gained consciousness or were put to rest? Right? Because, for instance, missing children in it, kids getting stuff in the suits. Okay, that's first. And then we know in FNAF 3 in the Happy State minigame, those souls get laid to rest. And you could say Golden Freddy was next, and you could say their soul was laid to rest in um, Custom Night, because after you beat the 50-20 mode, you see Golden Freddy, shaking off the distance. That could be when their soul was laid to rest. And the puppet was lit last because we believe the puppet Charlie Charlotte is still active post Security Breach Pizzaplex as like a poltergeist, and that's why you see a bunch of Nightmarium puppet imagery and plushies throughout Ruin. Right, so it's not death order, it's their souls being laid to rest order. So because then that would still explain Chica being first. Because because if we take it quite literally, right? Same thing with the I will put you back together line. Let's say it's quite literally. I was the first. I'm the one who's seen everything. Right? Take it to the literal extreme. I'm the one who's seen everything. I was the first. I, Susie, was put in Chica by the puppet first. I was the one who gained consciousness. My eyes opened inside the Chica animatronic first. I've seen everything. What if that's what happened? What if we take that line to the logical extreme? I was the first. I was the first person of the missing children to get stuffed in the suit. Seen everything. I came to consciousness by the puppet first. Because then you would still have, that first death being, still up in the air, still open, but Susie's death lines are still active. They're not being retrospective, retconned, or anything. You can still have those death lines. They just mean something totally different. So, I just want to throw that idea out there. Not saying I'm right or anything. Far from it. I'm sure I don't know anything. But to me, it's the whole idea of having your cake and eat it too. Because if we're taking some lines, like I will put you back together, to a logical extreme, literally about I'll put you back together in a robot form, why not take other lines that we've heard about that are important in the series? Why not also take it to a literal extreme? AKA, I'm the first that's seen everything come into consciousness. After I was drunk when he killed Charlie, and anger as well because of the loss of his daughter, which solidifies was the first death, at least in that part of the game. Interesting interpretation. That opens up another can of worms. I don't know about you, but I've been fun talking about FNAF and lore and timeline implications, especially early on in the series. I'm having fun. I enjoy this. I enjoy doing this a lot more. And I'm going to keep doing this. But beside the point. But that opens up another can of worms. Is the idea of Charlie Charlotte's death after being drunk and everything is why does he kill? Why does he kill Henry's daughter? Right? He saw Charlie Charlotte was locked outside the pizzeria, drove to them in the alleyway and killed them. Why? There was a reason for him killing. Now, could it be the whole Elizabeth Afton being dead and it's revenge where it's like, oh, my daughter was killed, so now I'm going to get revenge by killing your daughter? Maybe. Right? But there has to be a reason for him to kill. It wasn't just like, oh, because I don't think anyone believes that Charlie dying in the alleyway by Afton was some just like random occurrence, random event. Like it was planned out, orchestrated, that Afton had some ill intent to Charlie, Henry, both, something that caused them to lash out and kill. Right. Was it Elizabeth Afton dying first and that's what caused them to go off the rails? I don't know. My idea on that whole event, and we will get to Midnight Motorist, I promise, because now we're going to talk about Midnight Motorist. But my whole idea of Midnight Motors and why he killed her and everything is because I've brought this up on previous FNAF theory reactions of how there's multiple businesses, multiple companies of people getting brought out. And I connected that to Chuck E. Cheese in real life. Because Chuck E. Cheese was the same deal, where there was multiple franchises. And if I remember correctly, it's been so long since I've read about this stuff. But the idea is Chuck E. Cheese has two franchises. Um, and one of them, right, was way more popular than the other. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Chuck E. Cheese was the popular one. And the other off brand one was going bankrupt. And then caused Chuck E. Cheese to buy out that franchise that was going bankrupt. And they merged to be like one franchise, one conglomeration. And that caused like certain animatronics to then be part of the cast from then on forward. Right? And we believe FNAF operates in the same deal, where William Afton had a business, Henry had a business, one person was going bankrupt and then was bought out by the other. Right? One was bought out by the other. That's how we get to the whole Meeker Melody territory, right? But this posed the question then, two franchises, one was bought out by the other because of bankruptcy, and then merged as one franchise. The question is then, is who was bankrupt? Who was bought out? Was Henry bought out by William Afton? Or was William Afton bought out by Henry? Right? Someone was bought out by someone. And I bring this up because what if, I'm not saying it's true or not, but what if William Afton had this dream of being a genius animatronic inventor with this franchise, Freddy Fazbear, right? And it's failing, it's going bankrupt. Henry's successful animatronic business, because we know he's a genius prodigy inventor. He's able to turn animatronics into anything. He gets bought out by Henry. William Afton's failing business gets bought out by Henry. And now he's no longer bankrupt. That would make William Afton very envious, very jealous of Henry's ability and success. That jealousy had a boiling point of his business being bought out, being saved, and that caused him to lash out and kill Henry's daughter as a seek of revenge. Right? I don't know if that happened or anything like that, but it's an interesting thought. Right? But to me, that was a sticking point. Is multiple franchises merged together, and maybe that's just one of the reasons why William Afton lashed out. I'm also not ignoring the Willie. I just want to make this clear. I'm not ignoring the whole Elizabeth Afton dying first. That is William Afton's revenge and killing Henry's daughter. Is both their daughters die? That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, I think that's a possibility. I just think there's multiple things that could happen. Like, hey, maybe there's a world where both things happen. Elizabeth Afton dies first, and then William Afton's company gets bought out, and then these things combine, coalesce into the revenge / trauma, grief, into killing Henry's daughter. I don't know. It's just an idea. All right. What do you think is going to be understood about the lore of Seek of the Mimic? I would say I don't have that many high expectations and hopes of Seek of the Mimic. I'll probably look to play the game on stream and everything. At least that's the hope. That's a plan. So that'll be fun. I would say there's two hopes. If I could get my dream game from Steelwall about Secret of the Mimic, I would say it's these two things. A, I want to know what makes the Mimic software and what doesn't. Because at this point, the franchise has gotten so futuristic with VRs, ARs, technology, glitch trap viruses. Like, it's so futuristic technology based that it's so confusing. And it feels like at this point, every single new character that's introduced has some ties to the Mimic, right? And I feel like it gets confusing and just throws around like, oh, this is tied to Mimic software, or this is the Mimic, or this is a rebuilt version, or a developed version of the Mimic, right? I just want a more clear definition of what makes the Mimic, what doesn't make the Mimic. Because at this point, Baby has been linked to being the Mimic. Glitch Trap is the Mimic. Helpy is the Mimic. The Mimic from Ruin is the Mimic. Burn Trap is the Mimic. Vanny is tied to the Mimic software. Right. And I think that's it. So basically my premise is so many characters tied to the Mimic software at this point that it gets confusing to talk about, because what is connected to the Mimic software, what isn't, what makes the Mimic, what doesn't make the Mimic. That's my one ask. My second ask is Henry versus Edwin, that very hotly topic debate. Edwin versus Henry. Are they the same person or are they different? Because people say they're different, but I beg to differ, because their backstory quite literally is the exact same. They're both dads, genius inventors that can make animatronics magic out of anything. They both had a kid who died at a young age, and then their robot creation that was connected to their dead child was beaten and bludgeoned to death by the Green Father over agony and suffering of their dead child. Said robot creation that was infused with agony goes on a killing rampage, is now a villain. Right. So are they the same person or are they different? Because their backstory quite literally is the exact same. And it's annoying. It's like, oh, Henry is a stand-in for Edwin, or Edwin is a stand-in for Henry, or no, they're two different people. It's like, what is it? Is Henry the same or is he different?